If you've been looking for more house, a little more breathing room, and a price tag that's easier to swallow than Temecula or Murrieta, chances are Winchester has already popped up on your radar. And on paper, it looks like a pretty incredible deal. Newer neighborhoods, beautiful homes, more space, and often significantly more affordable than some of the surrounding communities. So why isn't everyone moving there? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Because Winchester might be one of the most misunderstood places in Southwest Riverside County. Some people move here and absolutely love it. Others realize after they've already bought a home that it wasn't really what they expected. The difference usually comes down to understanding what Winchester actually is, what everyday life really feels like, and whether those trade-offs fit the kind of life you're hoping to build. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who Winchester is perfect for, who might be happier somewhere else, and whether it deserves a spot on your shortlist. Welcome back to Love to Live in the Temecula Valley. I'm Catherine Materiali. If we've never met before, I've been helping people relocate to the Temecula Valley since 2009. Every week I help buyers who are trying to answer questions just like this one. Where should we live? Sometimes that's Temecula, sometimes it's Murrieta, sometimes it's Menifee, and more often lately, it's Winchester. Now, Winchester has changed tremendously over the last several years. Entire master plan communities have been built. New construction continues to expand, and it's become one of the fastest growing areas for buyers looking to stretch their budget a little further. But Winchester is also different from every other community I've covered on this channel. There are things about living here that I absolutely think you should know before you decide to buy a home. Some are great, some are trade-offs. None of them are deal breakers if they're the right fit for your lifestyle. So in this guide, we're going to cover what Winchester is really like, including the neighborhoods, schools, shopping, commute, parks, new construction, taxes, everyday life, and some of the things that surprise buyers the most after they move here. Because my goal isn't to convince you to move to Winchester. It's to help you decide whether Winchester is the right place for you. Now, before we get into neighborhoods and home prices, there's one thing you need to understand about Winchester because it affects almost everything else we're going to talk about. And honestly, it's something that surprises a lot of buyers. Winchester isn't actually an incorporated city. It's an unincorporated community that's governed by Riverside County. Now, before you think, okay, what the heck does that even mean? Let me explain why it matters. For most people, day to day, it doesn't feel dramatically different. You're still living in a beautiful neighborhood. Your kids are still going to school. You're still driving to Target, grabbing groceries, and going out to dinner. But where it does make a difference is behind the scenes. Things like planning road improvements, code enforcement, and other local services are handled by Riverside County instead of a Winchester city government, because there isn't one. And that leads to one of the biggest trade-offs you'll find here. Winchester has been able to grow incredibly quickly and offer newer homes at prices that are often more affordable than nearby Temecula or Murrieta. But at the same time, some of the commercial development, infrastructure, and city services are still catching up. Personally, I don't think that's automatically a bad thing. In fact, for a lot of my clients, it's exactly why they choose Winchester. They're looking at the bigger picture. They'd rather have a newer home, more living space, and a little extra room in the budget, even if it means driving a few extra minutes for shopping or waiting a little longer while the area continues to develop. Others decide they'd rather be in a community that's a little more established with more restaurants, shopping, and amenities already in place. Neither approach is right or wrong. It really comes down to what matters most to you. And that's going to be a theme throughout this video because Winchester is full of trade-offs. Some of those trade-offs are incredible opportunities. Others might make you realize another community would fit your lifestyle better. And I think it's important to understand both before you make such a big decision. So, what's it actually like to live in Winchester? The first word that comes to mind for me is space. Not just bigger homes, although you'll certainly find plenty of those. I mean space in almost every sense of the word. The neighborhoods generally feel more open. The roads are wider. There are still pockets where you'll drive past open fields, horse properties, or land that's waiting to be developed. It's a different feeling than driving through more established parts of Temecula or Murrieta, where just about every piece of land has already been built on. If you're coming from somewhere that's densely populated, Winchester can feel like you finally have a little room to breathe. Another thing I notice when I'm out showing homes here is how quiet many of the neighborhoods feel. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't growth happening, because there absolutely is. You'll see new communities being built, construction in different areas, and roads that continue to improve as the community grows. Winchester is very much still evolving. But once you're back inside many of the neighborhoods, it has a slower pace than you'll find in some of the surrounding cities. One thing I also think is important is to set expectations around convenience. If you're someone who wants to be able to leave your neighborhood and have dozens of restaurants, shopping centers, coffee shops, and entertainment within just a couple of minutes, Winchester may feel a little limited today. Many residents regularly drive into Murrieta, Menifee, or Temecula for shopping, dining, entertainment, and even some everyday errands. That's simply part of living here right now. The good news is that more commercial development continues to come to the area, and that's expected to grow over time. So if you're the type of person who doesn't mind driving an extra 10 or 15 minutes for more options, you'll probably adjust very quickly. On the other hand, if you want everything right outside your front door, that's something you'll want to think carefully about. For a lot of families I work with, though, that's a trade they're more than happy to make. They tell me they'd rather have the extra bedroom, or the bigger backyard, or the newer home, or simply spend less money than they would in another nearby community. And for them, that's an easy decision. If you've spent any time looking at homes in Temecula or Murrieta, and then you start looking in Winchester, one of the first things you'll probably notice is your money often goes further. Now, every market changes, so I'm not talking about exact prices because those will continue to fluctuate. But generally speaking, buyers are often able to get a newer home, more square footage, or a larger lot here than they could for a similar budget in some of the neighboring communities. And that's one of the biggest reasons so many people have Winchester on their radar. You'll find a lot of newer neighborhoods with modern floor plans, open kitchens, large primary suites, energy efficient features, and all the things buyers tend to have at the top of their wish list today. There are also neighborhoods with larger lots, and if having extra outdoor space is important to you, Winchester is definitely a place worth considering. One family that comes to mind is Lindsay and Louie. When we first started looking together, we were actually searching in Menifee because they thought they needed an older home with acreage. Louie owns a business and they needed space for work vehicles and equipment. So we were focused almost entirely on properties with land. But the more we explored their options, the more we realized there was another solution. We ended up finding them a brand new home in one of the new communities off Dominigoni Parkway that offered oversized lots. Not only did they get a huge lot that gave them the space they needed, but the home also had a next-gen suite. They've been able to rent that suite to a friend, which brings an additional monthly income and helps offset their mortgage. And even though the home was only about 15 minutes farther than where we originally started looking, they ended up with so much more of what they were hoping for. That's one of the things I love about helping buyers through this process. Sometimes it's not about finding exactly what you thought you wanted. It's about finding a better solution that you didn't even know existed. Now, one thing I do want to mention while we're talking about housing is property taxes and Mello-Roos. Some of Winchester's newer communities do have higher Mello-Roos assessments than you'll find in certain parts of Temecula or Murrieta. So while you may pay less for the home itself, it's important to understand the total monthly cost before you decide what's the better value. Whenever I'm helping a buyer, we don't just look at the purchase price. We're looking at the full picture, including taxes, HOA dues, and if there are any, and insurance as part of your monthly payment, because that's what really matters. One thing I always tell buyers is that Winchester isn't one neighborhood. There are quite a few different communities here, and they each have their own personality. Some are slightly more established neighborhoods, especially in the French Valley area. Others are brand new communities with parks, walking trails, and modern amenities. If new construction is high on your wish list, Winchester is definitely one of the places you'll want to explore. There are still several builders actively developing communities here, which means you may have opportunities to choose your floor plan, select finishes, or even purchase a home that's still under construction, depending on timing. Now, one thing I always encourage buyers to do is to look beyond the house itself. Pay attention to the neighborhood. Where's the closest park? Are there walking paths? How busy are the streets? Can your kids ride their bikes? How close are your neighbors? These are the kinds of things that affect your everyday life long after you've unpacked the moving boxes. One family that immediately comes to mind is Andy and Liz. Andy and I actually go way back. Years ago, I helped him buy his very first home, which was a condo in Murrieta when he was single. Fast forward a few years, he met Liz, they got married, started their family, and suddenly their needs looked completely different. When it came time to buy their first home together, we found a brand new home in one of Winchester's newer neighborhoods off Dominigoni Parkway. And it checked so many of the boxes that mattered most to them. Andy works at March Air Force Reserve Base, so the commute made a lot of sense. He also had a coworker who lived in the neighboring community, which meant they could carpool together. Their home sits directly across from the neighborhood park, so they have that green space right outside their front door. And they were able to get the good-sized backyard they really wanted without stretching beyond the budget they were comfortable with. That's what I love about stories like theirs. From the outside, someone might just see another new construction neighborhood. But for Andy and Liz, it wasn't really about buying a brand new house. It was about creating an easier daily routine, a shorter commute, more time together as a family, a park that's literally steps away. Those are the kinds of things that make a house feel like home. And that's why I always encourage buyers to spend just as much time exploring the neighborhood as they do touring the actual house. Because eventually, the excitement of the new countertops wears off, but your neighborhood becomes part of your everyday life. One thing that's really important to understand about Winchester is that it almost feels like two different communities, depending on which side you're living on. And this affects a lot more than just your address. It influences where your kids may go to school, where you'll grocery shop, where you'll go out to dinner, and even which city will probably start feeling like your hometown. If you're looking at neighborhoods off Dominigoni Parkway, you're generally going to find yourself connecting much more closely to Menifee. For everyday errands, that's probably where you'll head for groceries, restaurants, shopping, and a lot of the day-to-day things you need. Those neighborhoods also generally feed into the Hemet Unified School District, although you'll always want to verify the specific school assignments for any home you're considering because boundaries can change. On the other hand, if you're looking at neighborhoods off Winchester Road in the French Valley area, your daily life tends to revolve much more around Murrieta and Temecula. Those are typically cities where you'll shop, eat, and spend a lot of your time. And those neighborhoods generally feed into the Temecula Valley Unified School District. Again, depending on the specific address, so it's always worth confirming before you buy. I think that's one of the biggest things buyers don't realize when they first start searching here. They'll say they're looking in Winchester, but two homes with the exact same zip code can lead to two very different day-to-day lifestyles. That's why I spend so much time talking with my clients about what their everyday routine actually looks like. Where do you work? Where will the kids be going to school? How often are you grabbing groceries during the week? Where do you think you'll spend your weekends? Because those answers often determine which side of Winchester is going to feel like a better fit. And while we're talking about schools, I always encourage my clients to do their own research. Visit the campuses if you're able to, explore the district websites, and make sure the schools align with what's important for your family. Every child is different, and finding the right fit is far more valuable than relying on someone else's opinion. At the end of the day, Winchester isn't just one community. It's really two different lifestyles connected by the same name. Understanding that can make a huge difference in finding the part of Winchester that feels like home. Another question I hear all the time is, what's the commute like from Winchester? And the answer really depends on two things: where you live in Winchester and where you're trying to get to. If you're on the French Valley side of Winchester, your drive into Murrieta or Temecula is generally pretty straightforward, and those cities will likely become part of your everyday routine. If you're on the Dominigoni side, Menifee will probably be your go-to for groceries, restaurants, errands, and a lot of the places you'll visit most often. That's why I always tell buyers not to think of Winchester as an island. Think about the neighboring city that's going to be becoming part of your daily life. Now let's talk about work. If your job is somewhere up the 215 freeway, Winchester can be really convenient as a place to live. If you're commuting to Murrieta or Temecula, that can also work well, especially if you're on the French Valley side. But if you're making the drive into San Diego, Orange County, or Los Angeles every day, that's when I really encourage buyers to test the commute for themselves. Don't just look at the mileage. Leave at a time you'll actually be driving to work and experience it firsthand. Traffic patterns can make a huge difference, and I always think it's better to know exactly what that drive feels like before you buy than to be surprised after you've moved in. The same goes for your everyday routine. Think about where you'll grab groceries after work, where you'll stop for coffee, where the kids' activities are, where your gym is, where your favorite restaurants might be. Those little trips are the ones you'll make over and over again, and they have a much bigger impact on your quality of life than most people realize. One of the things I've noticed after helping families relocate here for years is that the buyers who are happiest after they move are usually the ones who thought through their daily routine before they ever made an offer. They didn't just fall in love with the house, they made sure the location supported the life they wanted to live. And I think that's one of the biggest keys to making a move you'll still be happy with years down the road. After everything we've talked about, you can probably tell that I don't think Winchester is the perfect place for everyone. And that's actually a good thing. Every community has its strengths, and every community has trade-offs. The goal isn't to find the best place to live. The goal is to find the place that fits your lifestyle. I think Winchester is a fantastic option for buyers who want a newer home, more living space, or a larger yard than they might be able to afford in some neighboring communities. It's also a great fit for people who don't mind driving a little farther for shopping or restaurants if it means getting more home for their money. I also think it's a great option for families who are excited about being part of a growing community. There are new neighborhoods continuing to be built, new businesses coming to the area, and a lot of growth that's still ahead. For many people, that's exciting because they feel like they're getting in early and watching the community continue to evolve. On the other hand, Winchester may not be the best fit if you want everything just a few minutes from your front door. If your ideal lifestyle is being able to walk to restaurants, have major shopping right around the corner, or live in a community that's been fully built out for years, you may find yourself happier in parts of Temecula or Murrieta. And that's perfectly okay. I've had buyers who absolutely loved Winchester. I've also had buyers who toured it and realized another community fit their lifestyle better. Neither decision was wrong. They simply had different priorities. That's really what this process is all about. It's not about finding the newest house. It's not about finding the biggest house. It's definitely not about choosing a city just because someone else told you it's the best. It's about finding the place where your everyday life is going to work the way you want it to. Because after the excitement of move-in day is over, you're left with your daily routine. That's what you're really choosing. And when you get that decision right, the house usually falls into place. So is Winchester the right place for you? Maybe. And I know that's probably not the yes or no answer some people are hoping for. But after helping people relocate to the Temecula Valley since 2009, I've learned that there isn't one community that's perfect for everyone. There are people who absolutely love living in Winchester. They love the newer neighborhoods, having a little more space, getting more home for their money, and being part of a community that's continuing to grow. And then there are people who tour Winchester and realize they'd rather be in Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, or somewhere else entirely because it fits the lifestyle they're looking for a little better. Neither choice is wrong. The important thing is understanding the differences before you make such a big decision. If you're planning a move to the area, don't just spend your time touring homes. Drive the neighborhoods, visit the grocery stores, grab lunch nearby, take the route you drive to work, spend a little time experiencing what everyday life actually feels like, because that's what ultimately you're buying. Not just four walls and a roof, a lifestyle. And if you've watched this entire video, hopefully you now have a much better idea of whether Winchester deserves a spot on your short list. If you're planning a move to Winchester, Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, or anywhere else here in the Temecula Valley, I'd love the opportunity to help. This is what I do every day, and my goal is to help you find not just the right house, but the community that truly fits the life you want to build. You can call me, text me, or send me an email using the contact information below. Whether you're planning your move next month or you're still a year away, I'm always happy to answer your questions and help you start putting together a game plan. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos about living in the Temecula Valley and all of the surrounding communities. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.